Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's episode of Roundabout Sports, presented by Interstate 70 Sports Media and Harsh Construction LLC. This is a little interesting. So it's episode 141. I'm the maestro, Jeremy Karp. It is July 30th, 2025. And we got a lot to talk about because, we have breaking news that literally just happened as we come on the air here. And that is that Cardinals closer Ryan Helsley has been traded to the New York Mets. And the return is we have Mets prospects Jesus Baez, Nate Dome, and Frank Elisalt in return for Ryan Helsley. It's very wow. Okay. A lot of breaking news as the Cardinals game is about to get underway, actually. Now, we're going to keep you posted on Interstate 70 Sports Media about that. And I don't want to take away from the amazing guest we have tonight because Stanley Karr is a really extremely talented guy, host of the Wrestling with Heart podcast, and he's a radio personality. So, like I said, there's a lot to talk about before I get started, folks. Of course, we have Poolside Pat, the Duke of Slips, chiming in asking, what are my thoughts on the trade? Well, my thoughts on the trade are simple. I think it's a great move to deal Ryan Helsley. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a great closer. But the Cardinals had made it clear they were not going to re-sign him in the future, even though he expressed the desire to stay in St. Louis. So in that regard, you're going to definitely want to, kind of get something out of Helsley instead of, as far as a package deal, instead of not re-signing him, letting him hit free agency, and then somebody else signing him anyway. And it's true. He says he wants to be a Cardinal. Do I think he'll be back next season? Anything's possible. I do think it would be a little far-fetched if he is traded, if he comes back to the Cardinals next season. But it is an interesting thought nonetheless. Like I said, folks, it's a little crazy to start off the show. We did not expect it. We figured Ryan Helsley would be traded necessarily 10 minutes before showtime. Not so much. But, yes, you can also find Roundabout Sports on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, Pocket Casts, anywhere you stream your podcasts. So be sure to check them out there. Be sure to check us out there. And once again, we want to talk about our sponsor, Harsh Construction LLC. Over 50 years in the industry of home renovation, over 50 years combined experience of home renovation and outdoor and landscaping work. Be sure to call 618-363-9818 for a quote today. That's Harsh Construction LLC. Now it's time. I'm going to bring in our guest this evening. Definitely going to be a different environment. We got, once again, from the Wrestling with Heart podcast and radio personality, it's my pleasure to welcome to Roundabout Sports this evening, the one and only Stanley Karr.
Hey there. Good to be here, Jeremy. Thank you for having me.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you on this evening, Stanley. Thank you so much for joining us. There has been a lot of stuff that's happened this past week, and especially in our specialty of professional wrestling. And I guess, while we're not going to make a whole length tribute show out of it, I did want to get your thoughts on the, I guess you would say, sudden passing of wrestling legend and Hall of Famer Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, it was very shocking. I had read some reports that he was not feeling well. He wasn't doing well in the last few weeks of his life. But it was shocking. And it's it was sad. This is we're talking about a legendary figure in the world of pro wrestling. I don't think
Oh,
we'd
absolutely.
ever I don't think we'd ever would be where we are today without somebody like a Hulk Hogan. Really transcended the business as well, and was a huge part of pop culture. I mean, he was in movies and TV shows, and just all across. It was just such a cultural icon, across the globe. So, um, I think that his legacy will be remembered in the wrestling circle as one of the greatest of all time.
And absolutely, and you know what the thing of it is? Some people will say he was a very, just a few moves, had the three punches, the leg drop, the big boot, all that. Watch his work in Japan. Watch his work with the AWA. There was a lot more mat grappling, technical, and it's crazy to think even high flying moves that Hulk Hogan had done back in the mid late 70s, early 80s. There's a lot of entertaining matches, and I think times like this are great for people to reminisce and go back and look at those memories, and those old school matches. But of course, he was the biggest star in wrestling in the 80s. He's one of the, I think, and I said this to a coworker. I said, look, even if you didn't watch an ounce of professional wrestling, you knew who Hulk Hogan was. It was just one of those recognizable names in the pop culture lexicon. And yeah, of course, over the past decade and a half, a lot of things he had done outside the ring generated a lot of controversy. But things went back even to the 80s regarding the whole thing about stopping the union from forming, or anything and everything regarding steroids, And I look at all these things and I say, you can detest the bad things while still remembering the good things. It doesn't have to be just one or the other. What are your thoughts, Stanley?
Yeah, I mean, you can. It's almost like one of those deals where you can kind of separate the art from the artist. Um, I think that he was just so legendary in the fact that everywhere you went, you knew who that guy was when you saw his picture. He was such a role model to kids. Saturday morning cartoons were the thing back in the 80s with the rock and wrestling connection, and later with MTV with the Cyndi Lauper and Lou Albano, and you had the Saturday night's main event specials on NBC. I mean this guy was like, we're talking about like a true mainstream sports icon. He was everywhere.
Right.
And I think that pro wrestling today, I don't think would ever be the same without somebody like a Hulk Hogan there.
Yeah, that's a big thing too. It was because during the 80s, you had MTV, you had the rock and wrestling. And I also look at just simply enough the first WrestleMania. And
Mm-hmm.
without Hogan, I mean, they put the company on the line for that event, and I don't think you can have a WrestleMania without Hulk Hogan as your star attraction, and that's just
No.
how I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that with him and Mr. T, drew, box office numbers and were able to carry that over into other events. I mean, WrestleMania was such a huge success that we're now 41 years into it, and it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. And Hulk Hogan was one of those guys that laid the foundation for what we see today.
Which is very true. And you know what's sad? And I can't remember it off the top of my head as far as the exact number. I know that they had mentioned with Hogan's passing, I know the main event of, aside from Mr. T, 3/4 of the main event of WrestleMania 1 has passed away. Obviously, the main event of WrestleMania 2, WrestleMania 3, 4, 5, like a big chunk of the first handful of WrestleMania main events, both competitors are deceased. And it's just so heartbreaking to think about. Because a lot of these wrestlers, you know, Hogan lived to be 71, but a lot of these guys lived even younger than that.
Yeah, it's a very scary time, and sad to see that all these legends are no longer with us, but we still remember them and remember those moments. And fans of all ages can go back and watch, you know, on the network or online, just how great these men were and women were, you know, that are no longer with us, and how they were trailblazers and pioneers, and really paved the way for the modern era. I mean, we're talking about a guy that was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. How many wrestlers can you say were made it to that level? Hulk Hogan was.
Has anybody made it since? Has any wrestler? I don't even recall John Cena or Triple H or Randy. I don't even recall Ric Flair being on the cover of Sports Illustrated. We're not talking WWE magazine. We're talking Sports Illustrated.
Yeah. I mean, this is somebody that I feel like really was able to cross over into mainstream pop culture and just be this phenomenon. He was, you know, he was just as big as Mickey Mouse was. You know, you could just get a picture of him right in front, and, you know, it's like people know who that is. Everywhere you go, you'd see the face and be like, yeah, I know that guy. So he's gonna be missed, and I think the wrestling world lost a true pioneer and true force that was a huge part of the growth of the industry.
I absolutely agree, and condolences go out to those who knew him, and more importantly, those who loved him. With that said, folks, we're continuing here on Roundabout Sports. I'm the Master Jeremy Karp alongside Stanley Karr. And Stan, I want to tell you, you are what we've talked about. I mentioned the show, and I believe you just recorded episode 214 today of Wrestling with Heart. And I'll put the logo up shortly. But the first thing I want to ask is, what's the brainchild of Wrestling with Heart? Where did the idea to do this show come from?
So I started the show almost 3 years ago. It'll be 3 years this September since I started Wrestling with Heart. And so I work at a community college in the Middle Tennessee area. And at the time I was taking this podcasting class, and it was the same year that I had attended my first WrestleMania in Dallas, Texas, and also had attended SummerSlam, which was in Nashville. And I, coming from a radio background and doing a bunch of music programming, I wanted to kind of do something different, and I felt like this would be a good opportunity to do a wrestling podcast. And initially, like I said, it started off kind of like as a class project, but in my head, I'm going, if I'm going to do a wrestling podcast, I want to do something that nobody's really ever done before, nobody's really ever touched on before. And as you know, there's countless wrestling podcasts out there now. It's unbelievable. You know, it's incredible of how wrestling podcasts have grown and everything. And it's amazing to see how there's a demand for it, which is awesome, and I'm happy to be a part of that. But I decided to do something on charity work and volunteering and helping out in your community because nobody really thinks about that kind of stuff. You hear all the time about how John Cena's granted a lot of wishes for the Make-A-Wish Foundation and some of the stuff that both WWE and AEW do, as well as some of the other companies. The other companies have done as well as far as giving back. But I just wanted to cover something that really hadn't been touched on, and that's where Wrestling with Heart came about. We're over 200 episodes in. I've got a lot of stuff that I've got coming up that I'm trying to get ready for and plan, and really aim to make this more than just a podcast.
And talk us through some of the growth that your show has had from when it just started from episode 1 to, a milestone 200th episode, and now you're at episode 214. Like, kind of just take us through that journey.
Yeah. So, contacting people, obviously, networking and trying to get as many people as I can. My guests have ranged from legends to Hall of Famers to people that are on the up and coming on the independent circuit. So Al Snow was my first guest on the show. Love talking to him.
Wait, who was your first guest?
Al Snow.
That's a great way to kick off a show. I'll say that. Al Snow is really someone special.
Yes, definitely. Enjoy talking with him. I've had on guys like Jake the Snake Roberts, Stevie Ray, Teddy Long, Victoria, Terry Runnels. I just recorded an episode with Mark Marrow. It was actually the second one I've done with him now to promote his new book, Bad to Good. And I've got a few people I've got lined up, and I'm working my way to try to get some more big guests on the show. So I'm trying to grow it. It's what I call a kind of a grassroots project. I'm just trying to make this something that can turn into one of the biggest podcasts out there. And trying to get it also syndicated on radio as well. I've now joined the Public Radio Exchange, trying to get the show through that, as well as through the Pacifica Radio Network. So I'm trying to make this thing become a hit. And so from there, I'd like to get some books written. I'm kind of in the early stages of writing one right now, just kind of kind of a compilation of interviews that I've done so far, and maybe turn it into a series, but try to start with the first one and go from there. So that's another goal of mine that I have, and I've been going to several conventions. I just now signed up to do WrestleCade in November. It'll be my third year doing that convention in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So I've been there. I've been to WrestleCon. I've been to the Wrestling Classic in Springfield, Massachusetts, and I'm looking to get out there and promote the show in several different ways.
Is there a guest that you have? Okay, so you're 214 episodes in. Is there a guest you are still aiming to have on the show, like a dream guest that you could plausibly have on the show, but you've yet to?
Oh man, there's a laundry list of people I want to ask. There's so many people I want to get on the show, and I've contacted them. Some of them, are busy at the moment, but obviously Mick Foley would be one. Kurt Angle would be another.
I would love Mick Foley. Yes.
I'd love to have those guys on. DDP's another one. As far as women, Trish Stratus would be great to talk with. Tori Wilson would be another one I'd love to have her on. And I know she's never done any podcasts before, but I'd love to get Stacy Keibler on. There's a lot of people I'd love to have on the
Okay.
show.
I mean, I'm guessing I'm not one of them. You never invited me, but it's okay. I'll forgive you. No, I'm kidding. It is totally fine. I am nobody special. It is okay. Um, I just think it is so cool that, you know, men and women that you grew up watching, these dedicated, hardworking athletes, you're able to promote things they do, share stories with them. I mean, it's a great experience. Um, is there ever, I guess the question I have is, you know, has there ever been a time where, you feel any type of burnout, or do you just keep grinding forward and, you know, just go off the high of loving what you do?
There's days where it can be tiring. There's days where, I probably, I'm overextended to a degree, but, there's a lot of life that I have and love into this project that I have, and I'm in this for the long haul. I think this is a marathon, not a sprint, and I've come this far with it being now, almost 3 years in. I've just found out today I'm now at 840 subscribers now on YouTube. I'm now part of the Pantheon Podcast Network. And, now from what now that I've kind of come so far into this, keep going, even if I get tired, some days I just tell myself I'm just going to keep on going. I think that because this is really a first of its kind and it's unique in a way that really hasn't been touched on before, I want to feel like I'm doing something that, myself, I'm making a difference by doing something like this, providing a platform for these men and women that have, done stuff for others in addition to their contributions in the squared circle. And we do talk about the wrestling side of it as well. But it's good to have a variety of different subjects and different takes on the business.
I was about to ask, you had just mentioned about making a difference. How do you feel, by giving these stars a platform? How do you feel that, you're making a difference? Not saying you're not. I believe you are. But take me through that.
Well, you want to. This is a celebration, right? It's a celebration of these athletes' accomplishments, both in and outside of the ring, and you're kind of showing that human element that you don't really get to see much. You think of just the big tough guy or the big tough girl, that's out there kicking butt and taking names, but you don't really think of the stuff that they do to put a smile on somebody's face, to get them through, 2 to 3 hours a week, and also some of the stuff that they're doing, like I've had people on that have talked about visiting, sick patients in hospitals and volunteering at their food bank or rescuing animals. I'm trying to create a platform for these men and women that are going out and doing these things, and it really, I want to show, wrestlers are human beings just like you and me, that are going out there and that are, paying it forward to people who are in need.
Honestly, I definitely love that. I want to think of another. So here's another. I think the best way to put it, because I do feel that I'm fortunate to be a part of the Wrestle Talk podcast that's done over, amazingly enough, 500 episodes. And you talk about just grinding and everything. I'll tell you, the episodes fly by in the sense of getting to 500. So for you, I mean, I'm sure it feels the same way for being at episode 200. Typically, do you air once a week, or what's your schedule usually like with the show?
Well, at first I started doing weekly episodes, and eventually I started going to 2 once I started, putting out content and trying to schedule interviews. everybody's schedules are busy, so I'm trying to coordinate it as best as possible. Sometimes I may do 2 shows a week. Sometimes I may do 3 shows a week just to try to get it out there. But I aim for 2 a week that'll be released.
Okay, that's a pretty good pace, honestly. And I definitely want to plug it and hype it up. So it is also I follow it on Spotify. That's where I'm subscribed to you on. I've yet to do it on YouTube yet, I can admit, but I know that you talked with Big Daddy Mike on today's episode, and kind of getting into the business and everything. And I know last week, or not last week, but just a few days ago, you had Stephen Green on, who's an independent professional wrestler. One episode that I think a lot of people should check out, though, is the Pitbull Gary Wolf episode that you did on the 11th, because as an ECW fan, I mean, I'm not like an addicted to ECW thing, but as an ECW fan, the Pitbulls were always widely popular. And once again, like we had opened the show, we had talked about a lot of wrestlers who are gone and that died way too young. So we cherish those that are around and be able to pass on these stories that, others sadly cannot.
Yeah, I enjoyed talking with Gary. He just an amazing storyteller, talking about how he started wrestling, with his friends and wound up working, some shows for WWE, and then eventually getting to work with ECW, and how the Pitbulls formed. Just an incredible tag team. ECW, I feel like, is one of those promotions that, kind of ushered in like the Attitude Era, if you think about it, because they were doing a lot of that edgy content and really kind of, pushed the envelope, so to speak, before WWE and WCW started doing it. So ECW really was a trendsetter for sure, and Gary was a part of that. Getting the chance to talk with him was really a thrill. And he also has a new book out as well, so we got to promote that as well.
Do you think that, and Paul Heyman has said this before, do you think that ECW was the first true victim of the Monday Night Wars? Because obviously financially, you have the billionaire Ted Turner, you got the billionaire Vince McMahon, and you got little old ECW, which was fantastic. Great wrestling, great cult following, a lot of fun, but they just didn't have the good financial state. And that led to a lot of poaching in the sense of WCW and WWF kind of getting talent, from ECW. I mean, so what are your thoughts on ECW's standing during the Monday Night Wars?
I think ECW was always going to have a place no matter what. I think that they would have found a way to make things work. I mean, even when guys like the Dudleys and Taz and Raven, when all those guys went to WWE, I mean, they were still bringing in people. I believe Scott Hall and Dusty Rhodes made a couple cameos near the end of its run. I think ECW would have found a way to survive. And I think to this day, I mean, people still talk about how, they gained such a following, and the locker room, had like it was like a family. It was like they shared a bond, and they were able to, have, these relationships and friendships that still, a lot of them still go on to this day, so the fact that people still talk about ECW and have memories from that time and are able to share those moments. I mean, there's something to be said about that. I think ECW would have found a way to keep going. even with WWE and WCW going head to head. Wrestling was just at such a hot period in the late 90s and early 2000s. And there's no telling what would have happened, but I think ECW would have found a way to keep going.
Do you think they could have, with the same style of programming on a national stage? We see like GCW and XPW and a lot of other promotions over time have that hardcore and deathmatch style of wrestling that ECW had, even though ECW also popularized the Lucha Libre as well as a lot of other cruiserweights and tag teams. Do you think the style that made ECW famous would be able to thrive on a national and worldwide television scale in 2025?
So, I think ECW, if it was around today, I think would have always stayed true to like the hardcore, extreme, style of matches, because that's what ECW was known for. I do think, though, that they would have evolved to add in more types of content, more types of match types. I do remember Paul Heyman talked about when ECW got revived under the WWE banner that he wanted to throw in a little bit more of that like UFC or MMA style of competition when they brought it back. So I think you would have seen more submission style wrestling, maybe more mat-based wrestling if they would have continued. And I think you would have seen not as much gory stuff go on, but you would have definitely still had some extreme, rules matches and things like that still go on.
Fair enough. Folks, if you're just tuning in, this is episode 141 of Roundabout Sports, presented by Interstate 70 Sports Media and Harsh Construction, LLC, with over 50 years experience in home renovation and construction. Call 618-363-9818 for a free quote. I'm the maestro, Jeremy Karr, alongside Stanley Karr of the Wrestling with Heart podcast. And you had mentioned you have over 800 subscribers already on YouTube. You're working to be part of the Public Radio Exchange. And I looked at the YouTube channel, where you have all of your episodes, and you got it in a great playlist. And I will say this: I always feel that YouTube views are misleading in our field because, and I want your thoughts on this, because you look at episodes, with maybe Flash Flanagan or Julia Lynn, or Goldilocks, the viewer number isn't high. But then when you listen back and you see all your subscribers and you see the following you have amassed, there's always more in the story to tell.
I just take it one day at a time, and just try to keep going. I try not to get too impatient. If I don't get up to 1,000 right away, I'd like to get up to 1,000. That is a goal of mine, and continue to grow the channel and get monetized. But, I just try to be patient, one thing at a time.
I wanted to ask, have you ever had that time where, because you host the show solo, have you ever had the thought of having somebody come in, as a co-host or join alongside you? Or are you like, I'm doing a pretty kick-ass job solo. Why change it up?
Yeah, every now and then I've thought about, bringing on a guest co-host, occasionally, but this is something I feel like for me, I would want to do on my own. But, every now and then if somebody wanted to do like a special co-host show for a day or so, for an episode, I mean, it wouldn't be an issue. But I love doing it solo, and I intend to keep it that way.
Okay, nothing wrong with that. Have you ever had the envelope pushed on the show? As far as I know, we had talked before the show as far as what we wanted to stray away from, and there's of course nothing wrong with that, but has anything ever gotten too controversial, or the bar pushed too high on your show?
We're a feel-good show. We're trying to be an escape from reality. We don't want to talk about politics or religion or any kind of, touchy subject. So we try to stay away from things that are, controversial, I guess you could say. We're trying to be a show that appeals to the masses.
Fair enough. And now here's this. You appeal to the masses. How do you draw in fans that aren't professional wrestling fans? How do you get those, or at least are maybe casual fans, ones that are trying to get into it? Like, what do you do to try to say, hey, you should tune into this show. I think you're going to enjoy it.
Well, if there's a guest that's done something that might be, eye-opening, like when I've had Mark Merrill on, he's a motivational speaker. He speaks to kids about, anti-bullying and depression and stuff like that. That's something people might want to check out because it's relatable. You want to find something that, people are going through that may have had a hard time and are going out there and talking to kids, speaking with kids about, these issues. Kids are the future. Children are the future. And they deserve to have a happy life, as adults do. So I think that going out there and trying to find something that people, can relate to and have gone through, I think that's something that the audience might want to hear about, No,
absolutely. So I want to shift gears now because there's more to you, of course, than just the Wrestling with Heart podcast, which says a lot if that's, a big part of you. You had mentioned about wanting to be an author. Take us through the process of that and where that, that idea came about and why it means something to you.
Well, it's just a vehicle. It's just a vehicle to promote the show, promote the podcast. And like I said, I'm in the early stages trying to see who wants to be in the book and, and everything like that. But just in the process of researching and writing and transcribing, the interviews to, the pages. It's a process. Like I said, I'm in the early stages, but I feel like it's a way to make us really stand out, try to, create like a vehicle for the show. And that's what I intend to do.
And now you got your start in radio. Is that correct?
Yeah. This is going on 10 years. I just, was taking classes at my college and noticed that we had a campus radio station. And from there, I just got hooked right away, and the rest is history.
I was going to say, because I know you also have worked at WHIN, and you're still working there, correct?
Yes.
What? Okay. And I know that is down in Hendersonville, because in southern Tennessee, am I correct? Or Middle
Tennessee, actually. Middle Tennessee.
Okay. Middle Tennessee. Okay. How's it feel being in the real business?
It's great. There's nothing like talking to the listeners and engaging with them and being able to create conversations and letting people know what's going on and giving them that information and playing the songs that they want to hear and just make their day, put a smile on their face.
I definitely want to get your opinion on this. We've both been watching wrestling a long time. WWE just came out with the beginning of their WWE Unreal series. And it's supposed to be the authentic behind-the-scenes look at what goes on when it comes to professional wrestling, especially WWE, in regards to backstage, like in gorilla position, doing the shows, producing, wrestlers communicating, etc. What is your initial take on the series?
I haven't watched it yet, so I can't make an opinion enough to really get behind it. But I think that it's good to not know everything. With the age of social media, it's good to be surprised and not necessarily, find out what's going on, every few seconds, when you're on your phone and stuff like that. But I haven't watched the show, but I'll definitely check it out and see what goes on there.
Okay, well, fair enough. What about the concept of it? Let's put it this way. Since you haven't officially watched the show, the concept of being able to go behind the scenes.
I mean, I'd say over the last 30 or so years, with like stuff like Beyond the Mat and Total Divas and all these other productions, I mean, you're getting to see what goes on backstage, and there's it's like, there's a pro and a con to that. I'm more of somebody that's into not knowing what happens. I want to be able to be surprised and not know how the sausage is made, so to speak. I'm more into, the shock of everything and not, stuff being reported. If there's like a spoiler or if there's a return or something, is going on. But I like being surprised. I like geeking out over, the most unbelievable things that go on.
Yeah,
I just think that's how I grew up watching wrestling, was being shocked, being surprised at what was going on.
Well, and that's the thing, when the illusions have changed, and a lot of that is because, we grew up in an era where there wasn't social media. We grew up where, people really believed Kane was the Undertaker's brother, and so many other different interesting storylines and things that had taken place in WWE. How does, I think the biggest one is the fact that is the thing with kayfabe. I mean, kayfabe has been essentially dead for a long time, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I look at wrestling through the lens of a TV show. There's actors that are playing a part, and it's a weekly episodic program where there's storylines. In this case, we have, athletes, the wrestlers that are going out and that are performing. And so every week you want to know what's going on. And I think there's an element of kayfabe, I think, that should stick around because of the suspense of disbelief. I think I heard, The Undertaker once mention about, the importance of maintaining elements of kayfabe. You don't have to go necessarily to the extremes, but being able to
No.
have the audience get a feel for what's happening. So I think that's important too.
I agree. I do like having those surprises. I hate the spoilers. And they say, well, then if you don't like them, just don't look at them. But the thing of it is, it's not like it's just one source or site that dishes it out. It's countless. It is a plethora that posts spoilers and, backstage news we didn't need to know about. But they do it, and it definitely, I'm not going to say it doesn't ruin it, but it does the disbelief, the illusion is gone. Because you're thinking, oh, well, shit, we already know,
You want to go into watching an episode of Raw or SmackDown or Dynamite, whatever your favorite show is, and being able going in there going, I want to know what's going to happen next without reading about it, early, maybe an hour before. So I'm more of somebody that wants to be, find out, remember those cliffhangers almost? It's like whenever Raw would go off the air and Hot Angle would go on, and they'd be like, tune in next week and find out what happens, that made you want to watch, right? I mean,
exactly.
So I'm more of somebody that's like, I want to see what happens, but there's a lot of I will say wrestling, I think today, like as far as the talent, they're amazing. They are wonderful. They're incredible athletes. I think the women's division is killing it right now in WWE. They're killing it in all companies. I still am, a fan of the Seth Rollins and the Roman Reigns and all those guys. The men are killing it as well. But the women, I think, have stepped up a lot. And they're doing amazing things.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, the expectations, the bar was risen with women's wrestling. It's been well documented how at one point women's wrestling in WWE was just kind of throwaway, and that's what made the Knockouts division in TNA so fun to watch, because there was a lot of great quality wrestling going on at the time.
Yeah. I had Angelina Love on the show, and we talked about that. She was part of that, era. And so we talked about how, vital that Knockouts division was to the company. Really paved the way for what we see now with the women's revolution and the current era of women's wrestling.
Right. Especially with the beautiful people, with Lacey Von Erich, Velvet Sky, and Angelina Love. Yeah, that's a throwback. Gail Kim, Awesome Kong, ODB. I mean, there is. And now you look in AEW, don't get me wrong. Okay, and also I just got to throw her out, Mickie James. Mickie James has been a huge crossover, successful women's wrestler in multiple promotions. Like, it is fantastic to see.
Yeah, she really she's definitely a trailblazer. Really helped usher in like a new era for women's wrestling. You had, Trish and Lita, Victoria, Jazz, Jacqueline. Mickie James is right up there too.
And I think her and Jazz are two women that definitely get, and Jacqueline are definitely underrated and underappreciated.
Definitely. Yeah. Ivory as well.
Yeah, Ivory's another good one. There's a lot of great women's wrestlers that don't get um
Adulation that they should.
the adulation. Exactly. I was like trying to think of the right word. Um Well, Stan, I want to thank you so much for being on. Before I let you, first off, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thank you for having
Before
me.
we wrap up this evening, oh, the pleasure's all mine. Before we wrap it up this evening, I wanted you to take this time, plug your show and where it can be found and your socials. And, the floor is yours with this.
Yes. So Wrestling with Heart with Stanley Karr. We are on Facebook. Just punch in Wrestling with Heart with Stanley Karr. Give us a thumbs up and share the page with all your friends and followers. We're on Blue Sky at wrestlingwithheart.bsky.social. We're on Instagram at Wrestling with Heart. We're on Threads at Wrestling with Heart. We just relaunched our Patreon account. So punch in Stanley Karr or Wrestling with Heart, and we're on there as well. We're on YouTube. Obviously, we're on YouTube as well. Wrestling with Heart with Stanley Karr. Hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. Your support means everything. And find us wherever you can get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio. And I just checked recently, we're also on Amazon Music. So everywhere you get your podcasts, check us out. You will love what we have coming up.
All righty. I look forward to checking you guys out or checking you out more on the show. And ladies and gentlemen, that's Stanley Karr with Wrestling with Heart here on episode 141 of Roundabout Sports. Stan, thank you so much, my friend. Folks, as we wrap it up, I want to just tailor back to what we had said at the top of the show, and that is Ryan Helsley has been traded to the New York Mets, the Cardinals closer, for Jesus Baez, Nate Dome, and Frank Elisalt. Excuse me. So we will definitely be keeping track on Interstate 70 Sports Media for that. But folks, we're going to wrap it up here this evening. Once again, you can find Roundabout Sports on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Pocket Casts, and anywhere else you stream your podcasts at. We always put at the end of the show the NAMI helpline. That's 1-800-950-NAMI, 1-800-950-NAMI. The National Alliance on Mental Illness is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to building better lives for those who struggle with mental health. Roundabout Sports, Interstate 70 Sports Media can be found on Facebook, on X, and on YouTube. I am on X and Facebook as well, of course. And as always, to end the show, we put up the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. For that, you dial 988. The line is open 24/7, 365, 366 on leap years. Understand you're never alone in this world. There is always somebody out there who loves you, who cares about you, who wants nothing but the best for you. We all go through struggles on a daily basis, and your feelings and emotions are valid. But you should never you have to go through the struggles alone. You're just a phone call, a text message, an email, an appointment away from potentially that life-saving moment for you. And you could be the listening ears and watchful eyes for somebody else as well. I want to thank Stanley Karr once again for being on the show. Tune in next week when we have a UFL football coach and sideline assistant Tom Swoboda on Roundabout Sports. And until then, I'm the My Show, Jeremy Karp. And remember, life is a book full of empty pages just waiting to be written in. Make your lives